So I figure it's about time for me to do a little talking into the computer and not knowing whether people are going to listen or not, but just for posterity's sake. So this is somewhere around Fugue v 0.4, maybe like a 4.3. I'm putting notes into a file called 4.3, but getting really tired of being on some version 0.4, and gonna sometime soon maybe like try to bump it up. I don't know why that matters, but whatever. So I'm just gonna go through a few of the things that I've seen happen recently, and some exciting changes here that kind of lead me to believe that I can get to some kind of a stopping point at some point, and I'm just gonna go through those. The first item here, it's been so long I don't even know what this was. I think there was some alignment with the tree icons, and I fixed that. There was a moving on to the next item. There was a context menu for tabs, and I think I added the item for close all, so that all the tabs would be closed if you clicked on them. And I did that. I'm iterating more on the git commit, doing pretty much all of my git commits, all of my commits for this application through the terminal. So relying on that pretty heavily. Next item, there was some kind of issue. Actually, I know exactly what the issue was. With VS Code, if you hover over the gutter here, you'll see that these carets actually show up and hide or don't hide, depending on whether or not they are carets that represent a collapsed section or not. And now basically the only carets that show up are for collapsed sections, and that's kind of cool. Unless you hover it, it shows up where you could possibly collapse all of the stuff. So I did a little work on that. Moving on to the next item, started working on what I've been calling dynamic ops for the terminal, and I'll just go into that pretty briefly. You'll see terminal, bin, cat, and node here. Before now, you can see most of the ops that I was working on. One of them was terminal watch, and then I have a terminal ops.js that pretty much goes into like all the operations that could be added to the terminal. I'll give an example of what some of those are: print working directory, change directory, that kind of stuff. At some point, I kind of got the notion that if I did all of my development that way and had to list out all the operations as I created them, one, it wasn't really being true to kind of like maybe sort of like a Linux philosophy or whatever, but the other thing is like it just becomes unwieldy to have this like large file that defines these operations. So I started investigating this notion of a dynamic operation, and I'll just point out relatively briefly. You'll see that some of the troubles I'm having with files loading. I still haven't figured out exactly what I did at some point to make there be a delay whenever I select the file. It doesn't always happen. You see, if I go back to terminal ops.js, it loaded pretty quickly, and terminal ops dynamic will load again really quickly. That's sort of a sidebar, but the idea was I took the pattern from these operations that I had, and I decided I would start moving all of those into a bin folder. So just as a comparison, I have the cat keyword, which is down here. Basically what it took to define that was I go in and I define this part in the JSON, and then somehow I build in concatenation like into lower part of this, and I don't know exactly where that is. Change folder, state. Yeah, I don't want to go too far into that, but yeah, so somewhere along the lines, concatenation was built in there. So this sort of illustrates my problem. basically, okay, it basically becomes a read file event. So then essentially, like, the outer app has a system of events that it can listen to and will respond to. And most of these commands are basically just wrappers around that. As an example, let's look at cat in a dynamic op. And we'll wait for it to load. That problem is going to be the annoying topic of this recording, or the annoying friend of this recording. So it winds up being a lot smaller of a file, and essentially then you basically just define the operation, and all of this operation body right here, I think, winds up being ran in a web worker, and that's cool. That's me exploring that. It comes down to, like, eventually I head in the direction of things I've seen elsewhere, which the direction is you make a file system, virtual file system for this, your operations to operate under, and your operations wind up being closer to executables. So yeah, that's dynamic ops. I went a little bit further down another path and I just came up with an abstraction called node, and I really couldn't think of what else better to do. I'm trying to obey the concept of, like, keep it as close to the thing that you would see elsewhere. And in this case, it's one of those things that feels like it kind of doesn't fit, but I loosely am following a pattern of making something called node in the terminal. You type in node, and you type in node, and you type in the name of the file, and it'll execute the file. It's not going to work here because let's see, Fugue beta notes releases. I guess it could work. I'll give an example of that a little bit later. But the whole point is, I wanted a watch mode so that I could create some kind of index file or whatever, and then just say node and then -- watch, which is different than what node gives you. But I'll give a demo of that a little bit later. I'll just go back to the summary, and let's just suffice it to say for now that node exists. It's an abstraction, and it's something that people are, like, reasonably familiar with. I'm not in any way, like, fully replicating node in this 100 let's see, 100-line file. I'm not replicating all of node, but it's a reasonable abstraction, I guess. I'm going to go back to yesterday, the summary that I have for each of these, and that is really stupid and annoying, but I'm not going to complain too much about it. Too much. I also dug into APL, and just sort of read something on Hacker News, and it kind of got me thinking, like, man, I'd really like to kick around with APL a little bit. So basically, had an APL thing that was somewhere around. You'll notice there's this sort of like finger with a thumbnail looking thing. That's what APL uses for a comment block or comment indicator, and I kind of just ripped that. I've not been able to find, like, an APL logo anywhere. But yeah, so a couple of things I did with that was I used the recommended font that someone somewhere said was, like, the best APL font. And I needed something, and it's a different kind of language with all these different characters and things like that. I at least wanted to, like, have a somewhat standard version of the characters in place. And yeah, kicked around with APL for a little while. Now you can pretty much using the preview abstraction that I had, like, you can pretty much, like, just code APL if you want. So yeah, APL's in there, and probably come back to it at some point and kick around with it. But yeah. Go back to yesterday here and wait for the stupid delay that I caused somehow on myself. There's a new loading logo, and I think maybe the only way that I can show that one is by going to incognito and doing something like this. Yep, see, there's a loading icon, and it should start doing some kind of like cool, like subtle, like moving around or whatever. Anyways, at some point I'll work on this loader bar up at the top and get loading working in a really nice way. But yeah, that's what it looks like. It used to look like bar talk or something like that, but it's not like that anymore. So spent a little time kicking around with the logo. Another thing that was sort of annoying me was if I'm editing markdown and I've scrolled to a certain place, like if I scrolled there, as I change, I want the preview to pretty much stay in the same place, and you can kind of see what happened. It updated and the preview stayed in place. Basically, that was just keeping track of the scroll position as the template refreshes. But yeah, so I can kind of keep my position there. The editor minimap is a new thing. I can already see problems with it in the sense that like it's not showing colors properly for markdown for some reason, and it could just be something as simple as like I don't have the mode connected properly somewhere. Yep. But yeah, that was a lot of fun going through and basically making this little mini map. I tried to find a mini map for Code Mirror, and I found a couple that were halfway decent, but you know, pretty much just decided to write my own. This is a little Canvas plugin, and it's not perfect yet, but you know, it does the trick. It was something I was missing. Another thing I didn't put, okay, yeah, I've mentioned this here. So editor minimap, editor doc state, that's essentially like if I scroll down here and I go to something else, let's go back to that APL, and wait an eternity for APL to load back up. Yeah, so there's no doc state that needed to be remembered here, but there is doc state that should have been recalled for the markdown file that I was just on. And yeah, pretty much it should have really scrolled to a completely different position, but over scroll for some reason doesn't work, and so basically it just scrolled as far as it could scroll. Yeah, we'll work on overscroll later, but I'll show an example real quick of highlighting gets saved whenever you switch. Again, these are like niceness kind of things, or niceties. You don't want to be editing something or previewing something and like come back to it at some other point and it'd be sort of in a different state. So for the most part, this is in the state I just left it in. So it's kind of cool, a niceness. And the minimap was a niceness too, because you know, sometimes when you're looking at super long files, it's hard to dig through and see what the file is all about. And it's nice to kind of with the minimap here to be able to kind of just, you know, get an overview of the file. So it's something that I thought was important and kind of went with it. So yeah, and then context menus, like I don't use context menus very often for an editor, but every once in a while I find myself, right click, I want to copy and paste that, and copy and pasting wasn't working up until recently, so I just went ahead and got copy and paste. I had been using just keyboard shortcuts, and most of the time that works, but sometimes I have my hand on the mouse and I expect for the copy and paste to be working, and I was wasting time sometimes, you know, selecting that, right clicking, I can't do that, and then, you know, having to go back and try to copy it. Just didn't work really well. This also shows command palette here, which I have up, but it just doesn't have any commands in it. I will migrate towards having commands in there, but just not there yet. And I think that's pretty much it for this list. The other list that I kind of wanted to kind of walk into and talk about the things that you know, sort of in progress and in movement right now, maybe things that I won't be able to call it a 5 until some of these things are done. Obviously, the problem with the file taking a long time to load up. It's just it wasn't like that before. It's like that now, and yeah, I'm gonna have to do something about that. There's other things that break along the way, and I don't know why they break. I think yesterday, I kind of feel like if all these are closed and you right click and say, oh, I just disabled that. Cool. So there was this reveal in sidebar kind of thing, and I basically just disabled it because it wasn't working properly. The other thing is, like, at some given point, like, I may want it to be able to just like upload a file that's on my hard drive or somewhere close by, and have that included so that I can commit it. And I don't have that in place yet, so that's one of the things that I think would probably be good. Another area that is just atrocious is looking at search, and if I do something like blog or whatever, the performance on this one just it's just not terribly great. I could live with the fact that capitalization doesn't happen properly on all these, but like it's really hard to live with the fact that like sometimes this thing slows to a crawl. And yeah, so I did recently, I don't know if I include this in the last recording I made, but I did recently like make it so that if you find a search result and you click on it, then it actually will bring up the file itself. And I don't know why that loaded so quickly, but the other stuff that I'm clicking on doesn't load very fast. I don't know. In fact, wow, it's loading like reasonably quick. So yeah, but that was kind of a big deal to just be able to have it, be able to search and have it open up. Before I ever can say it's time to move on, I'll absolutely have to get this working properly. Well, it's kind of good to know that like when I do it that way through the command palette, I don't know if that's a command palette, but it seems to be running nice and slow, or not at all. Let's see. Control P, yesterday. There we go. And yeah, it seems to take a nice, reasonable amount of time for yesterday to pop back up. So yeah, it's still an issue elsewhere. Yeah, and then I'm not going to spend too much time on some of these other items, but a lot of them have to do with like when I go to the terminal, can I type help? Can I execute all these commands? And do they all work with dash foo, or can you do other? You'd be surprised how much how idiotic it can be, like just to try to get like the relative paths like working right. So yeah, getting those commands locked down tight. I'll give an example of one of the things that's going wrong. When you type in ls, you would expect that ls reads notes releases, but the backend sort of has its own concept of what is the current working directory, and that's what's going to give you the results of, or at least the last time I checked. Let's see, cd ... and then ls. Yeah, so see, it still gives me the same exact Bartok v0, all that. It gives me not what I would expect from notes, because notes is actually has all of this stuff in it. So yeah, just getting stuff like that straightened out, and making it so that like what is actually on screen, if someone tries to use it, it works the way that people would expect it to work. And that's really a big part of what I'm trying to focus on, getting things locked down. Now that I have the map and I have context menus working right where they're supposed to work, I think this one still is a browser context menu. I'll in the future have a context menu here that makes sense for the terminal. I do have the context menu working over here, and most of those items should be working. Just an example, copy relative path. If I hit paste over here, notes yesterday, that did what it was supposed to do. If I did copy path and go over here and hit paste, then I should get this full-blown path over here. So yeah, most of the stuff that's on screen is working the way it's supposed to work, and I have a few more things to tighten down as far as that's concerned, but I do want to get to a point where I've tightened them down and I've slapped a v0.5 or something like that on there. Still having a little bit of trouble getting there, but yeah. And I'll mention one more thing that I might sneak into this when I give the demo. I'm going to go ahead and give the node demo right now. So if I go over to welcome incubate, this is an area where I've created this file node test, which will take a nice little eternity to come up. I will go ahead while I'm doing that, and we'll actually go through that in the terminal. cd1 ncubate, and I would do an ls here normally, but yeah, if I'm lucky, this will work right. So node watch and type in node test.js. Yay, it worked right. So this is what I expect to see over here. The use case for this is, what if I wanted something in sort of a watch mode, and I wanted to be able to just go ahead and edit that file and see changes occur as I'm messing with it. And I did have that with the preview, but what I found was a lot of times with the preview, I'm doing something like I'm going in here all the time and saying that, telling the back end that, yeah, I want to show the preview. It was a lot more involved and a lot farther away from the abstraction than I wanted to be. So I moved away from it, and now I have a different sort of watch mode besides the watch mode that you get for basically just doing a preview. So I will probably build that out for several different languages, and just continue to see what that looks like, what the node abstraction looks like. I may at some point cause that to be, I may call that like a watch mode or something like that, which I do have that already, watch E, and then I can say I want to watch file change. Yeah. So now anytime a file changes, I should see this is happening. And I think, oh, I know. I can control C out of that, and I can say, instead of file change, let's do file select. I think I might have went through this with other videos, but just, okay, I have a command line over here. I can say that I want to watch certain events in the system. When I change to node select, it shows me what changed. When I change to yesterday, it shows me what changed. Basically any file that I would want to look for shows me a file change. And this, like, part of this was just all about building out a better terminal experience. I had spent a lot of time focusing on the preview experience, and that's cool. That got me going somewhere. But I kind of needed this other way of doing things, and so I'll exit out of that. Future hope would be that I could go ahead and stand up a server and on sort of mock server on the system, and go ahead and start hitting up against it for whatever things I wanted to hit up against it for. There's one more cool experiment before I go into that cool experiment, or talk about that. I'm going to talk about I think yeah, okay, brain fried a little bit there, so I'll just go ahead and show the experiment. The experiment was pane something. No, I'm just gonna have to browse for it, and that knocks me out of full screen mode, which full screen mode is cool. If I hit F11 on Windows, then I don't have to deal with that. So I'm going to go in here and find it. It was under incubate, and I think it was like panes. Yes. No, it wasn't panes. Oh, I know. it wasn't even actually in this repo. So I'm going to switch over to Fugue Beta, and now I'm going to be able to, here's a few other things. I did a storage tool which pretty much tracks all of the storage that's being used. That's cool, and I'd like to get to a point where I can change the storage a little bit better here. The thing that I was looking for, oh, I went to the wrong place. Fugue welcome, load this. Okay, now we're sort of in the right place. All right, the thing was called iframe drag. Yeah. So here was the concept. You can see there's a basic mocked up file list, and then we have an editor pane over here. The idea was you drop in one.json, some 1.json comes up here. 2.json allows you to basically add another tab. I'm not really sure why. Yeah, this is like an old version. So I'm going to show you how I have to do adding a repository. So I just click something. What happened? I don't know. This is another area for improvement here. Now I have to go over to network and be like, okay, how long before this finishes up? And that highlights another area for improvement. Basically, like, I shouldn't be downloading all this stuff unless someone says they want to go into an offline mode. I already have the tree structure. I should just put the tree structure over there, but instead I go through and I make copies of all the files that service has in it, and that winds up taking a long time. So why are we doing this? Because I recognized that there were some buttons in another version of this that I wanted to see or needed to see, and I wasn't seeing them. So yeah, I'm just loading up that, and then I'll wrap it up after that. So if I load Fugue welcome again, now I get the buttons that I was looking for. Cool. All right, now we're going. Okay, so if we pop one.json over here, there you go. There's the file. And the way that you would expect for this to be is when you take 2.jpg, you should be able to, like, oh, I want to split this to the bottom, or oh, I want to split this to the right, or to the top, or to the left. There were, if you saw earlier, there were actually libraries that I considered using for that. I just didn't like the way that they were doing what they were doing, and I decided to start writing my own. Yay. Sounds familiar. But this one.json, it will, like, basically like the first pane will split right, left, up, or split down. In the future, whenever I do the drag and drop it into down, left, up, or right positions, then it'll actually do it. But I'm just sort of manually doing this. So I can split right. I can drop something into that other. Pane. I can split left, and this is where things start screwing up. So yeah, fun little experiment. I do have it mostly working despite what it looks like. So if I split left, then I get that there. Pop this in here. I can split left again, and I can pop that in there. The problem comes in when I start splitting left and right or something along those lines. I can split up, and up gives me that. There's just some weird situations you can get into where those panes will no longer split the way that you would imagine them to split, and I'm still working on how to do that. But as soon as I get this figured out and figure out how I can do all the dragging and dropping and all that, then the entire pane system that this thing follows or uses will be sort of like rewritten, redone, and then there won't be just one pane here for editor, one pane here for an explorer, and one pane for terminal. It'll basically be like whatever panes I want to put up and save and all that, and so that things should get a little bit more interesting there and a little bit more like VS Code. Another thing I'm thinking about going away from is this notion of having a tab up here for preview. I kind of want to iterate on the node sort of pattern and make it so that in order to go into preview, I have to say preview iframe drag. And then some of the issues that I had with preview around, did the thing actually get locked, or did it change right, or did it show right? A lot of those just go away, because then it means that I have to specifically say I want to watch this particular file and I want it to update at a particular time when particular things change, and I don't really have that. To make it a little bit more clear about what I'm talking about, if I'm over here on, let's say, we'll say if I'm over on, there we go, there's a good example. If I'm over here on bookmarks, bookmarks should have a preview. I've selected it, and the preview pane is not locked, so we should see that this bookmarks file shows up. Well, what if I don't like the fact that the CSS or the delicious JSON there has a particular file, or has a particular attribute to it? So ideally, I'd want this preview to stay up, and I'd want to be able to click on delicious.json, edit it, and while I'm editing it, see the preview change. But if you notice with the preview logic, preview only previews the currently selected something. So, oh, that's new. I've never seen the little broken icon there. That's kind of cool. Wow. So there's still more to do on the tab here. I'm sorry, on the minimap. But it's cool. I got that little guy in there. So the idea would be that, yeah, I can say that I want to preview that HTML, and now I can go over and start editing the JSON, and then as the JSON changes, I get a refresh of the preview, and I can do that with a specific command saying I want to preview this particular file, and then I don't really have to lock anything. It's like it's already there. So yeah, that's pretty much it. There's stuff I could go into with this Fugue playground that I have, but yeah, that's not really the purpose of this. I'm just really trying to say where Fugue is currently, and this pretty much brings it to the point where it's like, yeah, that's Fugue, and that's where I'm at right now. So yeah, 4.3 still laboring away. And we'll see how far I can get before I record again the next time. And that's pretty much it. I don't normally say enough about thank you to whoever's watching this, because I don't really think that too many people are watching it, and I'm basically just doing this for posterity. But if you are watching this and you have questions, or you appreciate something about this, or whatever, you want to interact in some way, please reach out to me, or just leave a comment. I'll be more than happy to talk with you about it. I'm not at a point where I will start marketing this or saying, hey, Hacker News, here you go, this is what I've been working on. Because one, while I do have this Visual Studio kind of look overall, I would really like to change away from that to where I want to go before I start saying, yeah, here's this Fugue thing and it does things differently. I want it to kind of at least be capable of looking differently before I go further with that. And when I mean marketing. So, I don't make a big deal about trying to make this look like some shiny marketed kind of thing or whatever. I basically just keep track of this because maybe at some point people will be they will look at it and be like, wow, how did this become and how is this done? And I would like people to be able to kind of see where it came from. So, it's a pretty big undertaking, or at least from my point of view, pretty big undertaking to kind of do things this way. And I would like to think that other people can look back and be encouraged to do it, because it seems like there's lots of reasons why people wouldn't want to do it. I mean, for instance, I've built this far and I still have issues with things popping up quickly enough or whatever. It's really something that without some kind of concept of, hey, other people have done this kind of thing and they did it by themselves or whatever, like without some concept of like it can be done or some feel good about it can be done, I think it would be less easy. And I'd like to kind of like make it more easy for people to do this kind of stuff, because otherwise the only people that are doing it are people who are making money from it. And honestly, I mean, I'm glad people can make money doing this kind of stuff or whatever, but I think it leads to a particular kind of product or a particular kind of tool, and I don't want to go down the path of that particular kind of tool, and I don't really like that other people would go down the path of that particular kind of tool. I mean, I'm glad they do. Thanks for VS Code, Microsoft, and all the people who got jobs at Microsoft and can do this all the time. But I feel like it leads to a particular kind of product that has some kind of nasty side effects, and I want something that's free of those nasty side effects. I'll go more into that later. Thanks for listening. That's really what I'm trying to say, and having patience with my, sort of nerdy kind of way of talking about things. I appreciate it, and thank you for taking your time to watch this and try to understand it. If you want to interact with me on it, I'm more than open to interact with you on it some. Thank you.